Channel 5 Network. This is Morning Line.
And good morning, everyone. I'm Adam Buscemi. You are watching Morning Line on News Channel 5 Plus. Go ahead and get your phones ready, your cell phones or your landlines if you have them. 615-737-PLUS. We're going to be asking the expert, and today the expert is the engineer, Chief Engineer Gibson Prichard. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Well, good morning, Adam.
I understand I should probably just step away because you're the popular guest.
Well, I don't know. I mean, they asked me to come on and answer some questions, and I said I'd be happy to.
There you go. So just to fill in for folks at home, really what we're going to be talking about is anything technical when it especially relates to the News Channel 5 network, whether it's CBS, News Channel 5 Plus, anything else related to the way we, as I said just a second ago, the way we look, the way we sound, even though Steve Haselp said you couldn't really vouch for the way we look sometimes. So.
I can't vouch for anything Steve does, no.
So 737-PLUS, and while we're waiting on those phone calls to start coming in, one of the big things that people probably notice if they have a flat panel television, if you're watching News Channel 5 Plus, all of a sudden things went from 4:3 to 16:9 recently.
Right, and
Talk about that transition.
What that means, in the television business, we think of 4:3 and 16:9 as terms that describe the size of a television. So traditionally, in years gone by, TVs were there was a ratio 4 times wide to 3 times high. So it didn't matter whether you had a 20-inch set or a 50-inch set. There was still a fixed ratio that it was always 4 times wider than 3 times high. Well, in the advent of HD television and flat panel TV, the aspect ratio changed. That is, that ratio between the width and the height changed. It's now 16:9, meaning that it's 16 times as wide versus 9 times high. And a few months ago, we made the change here on News Channel 5 Plus, recognizing that most of the people watching us are watching on flat panel televisions in a 16:9 format. So we made the decision to change News Channel 5 Plus from 4:3, which is more or less square picture, to a distinctly rectangular format, 16:9, which mirrors that we're doing on our primary channel, News Channel 5 HD.
And while we may not have the bandwidth to do everything in 1080p in full HD, it still brings us into a point where if someone's flipping by and they're on one of those flat panels, they don't just automatically discount because they see the pillar bars on the sides of the screen.
So, I mean, at the very least, we're filling the entire screen. That doesn't mean that you and I put on a bunch of weight. It means that we've, properly aspected the picture for a flat panel television. Now, for those people who are watching on a 4:3 set, a tube set usually, there are some methods, particularly on your converter box or your cable box, to either cut off the sides or to put what's known as letterbox, put panels along the top so that people don't appear to be tall and skinny, because obviously when you take a wide picture and bring it into a smaller screen, it can make everybody look skinny, kind of like stick figures.
Sure.
Although some of us could stand to lose a few pounds. And
maybe that's our secret.
That's unintended consequences. That's right.
We're going to go to Charles holding on line 1. Charles, good morning.
Good morning. I think possibly he is answering my question as I was dialing in. However, I'll put it more succinctly.
Sure.
Okay.
It looks like oftentimes when I'm watching the morning side, part of the person is cut off. For example, now it looks like part of the guest it's not completely in the picture, so the edge of each picture seems to be cut out on I didn't know if it's my set or if it's the way it's being transmitted.
Well, that's a good question, Charles. It probably, although I'm not entirely certain, it probably is the way in which you get your signal. Do you receive us over the air, or do you get us on cable? Okay. Well, so there are different ways, of course, that you can receive News Channel 5 Plus. You can receive us with a TV over the air, with Channel 5.2 over the air with an antenna. That could be a converter box if you have an older TV that doesn't have a digital tuner. So that would be a box that you purchased a couple years ago. And in that box, you can change what's known as the aspect ratio to allow us to fill the entire screen. And the same goes for your cable box. If you receive us from Comcast or Charter or another cable system, usually the cable box itself, the one that you change the channels with, has some option to set the aspect ratio to make us properly fit the screen, because the pictures that I'm looking at don't have you or I cut off. I mean, we're properly fitting in the screen side to side.
Sure. And I've got an old TV, tube TV up in our game room now, and it's got like an old converter box on it. But it's funny now, even when you watch it and it's set up properly, you still see a lot of advertisers today. They're all shooting
16 by 9,
1080p, 16 by 9, and you can tell now unintentionally things are, there used to be the safe zone, now things are just cut off because they're assuming everyone has kind of moved along.
And that's a presumption, and it's unfortunate that sometimes advertisers do produce a commercial that has the things that they want to convey, like their telephone number or their website, that is too wide for a 4x3 television, and on a 4x3 set ends up getting cut off.
And there are a lot of people who still have like cable service or something that they didn't have to make the transition.
That's right. So if you have standard def cable from Comcast or Charter or other cable providers, those companies are handling the transition for you, or handled it now, which is, gosh, it's been 4 years.
Right.
So yes, you're correct. Those cable companies are covering it for you. Although we do send a 16 by 9 signal to those cable companies, it's up to them what they do with it ultimately to transmit it to their viewers.
Perfect. Now we're going to go to Sue now, holding on line 2. Sue, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Adam. It may, Mr. Prichard might have just answered my question partially, because he said it's up to the companies what they want to do with the signal. I've got an AT&T UVerse subscription. And by the way, I'd like to know where the transmitter is. I live in the West End area, so I'm not that far from the station.
Sure.
And when I got my first antenna to pick up the Plus, it wasn't working very well, and I went back to Radio Shack and I got an HD antenna. I actually basically spent a little bit more money, I guess, on it, and it seems to be working pretty well. But I noticed even just at this second, the picture's gone. It'll come back in another second, and I can move the antenna, and sometimes that'll help. And I do have extensive problems when the weather's bad. So I'm wondering about, well, first of all, what is I've been told, because I not only don't get the Plus on UVerse, I don't get some other channels I was promised, including the cable access stations. I get 10 Metro government channels, but none of them are for Davidson County, where I live, which means somebody in Cheatham County is getting the Davidson County government channels, which they don't watch. And I talked to Mark Binda about this originally, because when I switched to UVerse, they told me I would be getting all the local stations, and he said, so I said to him, which station is the equivalent of 250 on Comcast? And he said, well, we're not on AT&T UVerse. And I said, you got to be kidding. He said, no. He said, we've been negotiating. But again, how stringently are they negotiating? Because it seems like whenever there are disagreements between a cable company and an individual, we'll say, network, it's like ESPN or Disney Channel. It's always at the end of the contract, and they always resolve it in a couple of days.
Right.
And I don't think that, I can't imagine that Landmark, is Landmark still the owner? I can't keep track of.
No, they're not. We are owned by a company called Journal Broadcast Group, based out of Milwaukee.
I can't imagine the Journal Broadcast Group is strong-arming AT&T. It wouldn't make any sense.
Well, no. Let me ask. Well, first, let me answer your first question. Is that our transmitter is located on the north side of downtown, along Interstate 24, near the intersection with Old Hickory Boulevard, on the north side of Nashville. If you're coming north out of downtown, there are 3 towers that you might see, and ours is the one on the right that's painted red and white. So in terms of aligning your antenna from a location on West End, you'd be looking pretty much north or northeast for the best signal. On to the subject of UVerse, and I'll go back to the antenna question in just a minute. UVerse exists across the whole country, just as Dish Network and DirecTV do, and they carry the signals of the broadcast stations in the local market. So in Nashville, that means all of the over-the-air channels are carried on UVerse. It is UVerse's policy, and I don't pretend to speak for them because I don't work for them, but it's their policy to carry the primary channels, the primary signal, or the primary video stream, as we call it in the industry, the primary piece of content that a given signal transmits. So
oftentimes that's an affiliate.
Right. So in the case of us, News Channel 5, they carry our CBS signal, but not News Channel 5 Plus or This TV, which is our classic movie channel, which is aired on Channel 5.3 over the air. And the same with Dish and Direct. It is often cases, and I don't intend to speak for them, but it's a case of precedent. If they were to carry News Channel 5 Plus, which many people would like to, I mean, we'd certainly be happy for them to do that. They would then open themselves up, at least that's how they feel, open themselves up to carrying every second channel across the whole country, Kansas City, Topeka, Denver, every other city in the country that offers a second channel. A second piece of programming would then be, under precedent, subject to carry by UVerse and Dish and Direct. And while that would be fine for consumers, those companies say, well, that takes up too much space on our network, when we can be offering ESPN or Disney Channel or something, some other piece of programming.
It's all about bandwidth.
It's all about bandwidth. It's
Sure.
about the available space, either on satellite or on their fiber network, in the case of UVerse, to transmit those signals to the consumer. And let's be frank about it. There are many stations who have a second channel that is not very highly watched, and so they're out there. They could be, transmitting infomercials. They could be doing anything really. I don't want to speak about the other broadcasters in a given market, but in the case of News Channel 5 Plus, where we create and air original content that's local, we feel like it, could be covered by those providers, and certainly up to them to do so, and we'd be willing to talk about it with them. But that is more Mark Benda's place. Mark is our program director, whereas I'm the chief engineer.
Seems like Sue knows all of us here. Sue, if you could just continue to hang on, we'll get the other part of your question answered in just a minute as Morning Line continues. Stay with us.